My mother and my brother were murdered in front of me. He put the gun to my head, and he had me beg for my life. I was 10. I just turned 10.
It's hard to come out and say that I was a victim and that I was abused, especially when you're little, because it's like a big secret that's always on your back and that you never know when it's going to come out.
The image of my brother falling on that concrete floor and people stepping and just kicking with shoes on his face, I couldn't get that image out of my head.
Trauma is an overwhelming event. It takes away our safety, it creates a sense of helplessness, and it continues to affect our perception of our reality.
Some of the telltale signs of trauma are quite evident. Many of these symptoms, it's not that we don't see them, it's that we don't put together the entire sort of picture of what trauma is. Inability to sleep or interrupted sleep, inability to focus on what's going on, really not able to attend to learning. Adults need to be aware of children who are exposed to violence and intervene early and stop it.
I don't like the environment that I stay in. People getting killed every day, drug deals, people getting snatched, raped, cut up.
Whether it is a child who witnesses violence or a child who is the victim, you can't be fearful and be able to live your normal life. You have to be able to think clearly, and when you're traumatized, you can't do that.
Violence continues then to affect the child in their perception of their community, of their family, that danger is right around the corner. And the brain gets wired to expect danger.
My dad started actually physically beating me to the point to where I'd go to school with covered in bruises. I don't know how many times I've been threatened to be killed by my own dad.
My brother got shot in the head. He ain't make it.
It makes you afraid at times. It makes you feel that, oh my God, you know what, I just lost a friend, I just lost a family member. It just makes you feel that, hey, I could die next, I could be the next one dead.
What trauma does is it triggers what's called the amygdala in the brain, which is our fight, flight, freeze center.
And it truly is a change in the brain and a change in the stress hormones that are flowing through the body.
All our brains have what we call alarm systems. Because the brain now has been wired for danger and it's triggered into this fight-flight, we don't just get over a traumatic event. It continues to impact us.
I started hearing my mom scream in the middle of the night. And it got to the point where he started beating me and my sisters. I let my anger build up, didn't talk to anybody about it.
When you hold everything aside, it's like a bomb and it's like you're ready to explode and just somebody push that last button.
Most kids who've experienced violence oftentimes have experienced multiple types of violence. In the kids we see, the average number of different types of violent trauma is 4. And so complex trauma then affects multiple areas of the brain because it's ongoing.
Maybe it's gang warfare, maybe it's drug use and abuse in the family, maybe it's domestic violence, maybe it's bullying at school. And if there is a layering effect of cumulative violence, it changes literally the DNA.
It all started off with the hugging game. He would take us into his room. We would sit on his lap and he would hug us, and we weren't supposed to tell anyone.
When I was 5, I would have to leave kindergarten class and go home and have sex with this man who was in his 50s. I remember the long walk home and crying and falling down and having to get back up and walking on.
Child sexual abuse exists in the neighborhood, exists unfortunately at our schools, at our churches, at our homes, everywhere. And there are children out there suffering.
My first assault was in high school. I met a guy at a church and he wanted to be my friend. I thought it'd be great. And Instead, he assaulted me, and I felt very scared.
When you have a child that doesn't get to work through that abuse in the appropriate manner, that abuse doesn't go away. It lives in that child.
Exposure to violence in childhood has been found to be associated with a really unbelievable range of long-term impacts.
Very young children who are exposed to violence many times have difficulty in establishing a trusting relationship. These children have fears.
You're twice as likely to develop depression. You're probably 3 times as likely to develop some type of anxiety disorder.
As they move into school age, they may have very, very serious behavior problems. As we look at adolescence, we see children running away. Sometimes children may be involved in the juvenile justice system, which puts the child at risk for being an adult offender. And so the cost of violence is staggering.
I felt isolated. Nobody knew what I was going through. To go 3 years without talking about it, I imploded.
Finally, after stressing and keeping everything bottled up and everything building up, I just finally broke down one day and attempted suicide.
Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death of children and adolescents in this country. We always ask in every case, what role might child abuse have played?
My mother, she knew that stuff was going on, but it just seemed like she didn't really care. She never stopped that abuse. And to this day, I've never forgotten what some of my family members have done to me.
These are traumatized kids, and so how do we then, as adults, professionals, caregivers, put a system around children that really is trauma-informed?
Happy feeling, good job, okay?
What do we do differently to help rewire their brain? And then ultimately, how do we build capacity in order to really help our kids?
Everybody come together, whether it's in the community, in the home, in the school, wherever children are, and child by child, think of ways in which we can intervene early and educate people about what children need in order to grow, to thrive, and to continue to be resilient human beings.